name is Sean Fairbanks. I'm with 2020 Plumbing and Heating. Our office phone number for any contact or service that you need to get set up is 951-396-2020. You can call me at 760-401-1830. We're here at the Orchard View project to discuss the water heating equipment that you guys have on site. You have it's a heat pump system with several heat pump units that are going to move water through the storage tanks and then go out to the building. So in the corner here is a controller. This is where your control panel that is going to show you any error codes you might have, anything like that. And programming and things like that are on here. There's really nothing you need to do as far as maintenance goes. Just know that that's your controller. Each one of these heat pumps works independently in concert with the controller to turn on and turn off at I believe we set the tanks for 120 degrees. Each individual heat pump has its own power supply that you can just turn off here if you need to do any kind of service and work on them. And next up we'll go to the tanks. Okay, so west building, we have 2 storage tanks, as well as on the other side of this wall is an electric water heater, which is also known as a swing tank in this system. But in this room we just have the main storage tanks, and we have a recirculating pump. This recirculating pump right here is what moves water through the building. If you lose power to it or anything like that, you're not going to have hot water in the building. Your hot water is only going to be here. So that's one of the first things that you would check in any event where you might get a phone call that says, hey, I don't have any hot water, is to make sure that your pump is on and working and the power is on to it. As far as maintenance goes, classic typical storage tank maintenance would be once a year, or even maybe a little longer, would be to shut the water off to it and open the drain valves at the bottom to kind of get rid of any sediment and scale buildup that might occur inside the tank. Periodically, once a year, it's probably good to do that. You can simply just shut the water off to the tanks. We've got one here, one up there. That'll shut the flow off to the tank, and then you can open and drain it. It would apply again here as well. Okay, here we are. We have the third component to our water heating system, which we are just south of the storage tanks that we just saw in the other video. So they're on the other side of this wall. The way the water heating works is the heat pumps that are outside move the water through these tanks until they get hot. This is a swing tank. It's basically just an electric water heater, and this is the last line, so that if water usage demand is really high and the water starts to come down in temperature, the electric water heater is kind of there to help keep the temperature up for the demand of the building, because the heat pumps generally heat the tanks a lot slower. So this is just a standard electric water heater. The power supply to it is right here if you need to shut it down and do any kind of service. Other than that, we do have a couple of elements inside that may or may not need long-term service, not necessarily something you would do annually or anything like that. But again, draining storage tanks to get debris and sediment out of them is a good idea for annual maintenance. And then inside here around the corner, there's a mixing valve, and this is the mixing valve, and that is the controller for it. All of the There's no adjustments or anything that need to be made to this. It's good to know that it's here, because all of your hot water goes through this valve and it mixes with hot and cold to regulate your temperature at the set point of 120 that we gave the mixing valve. So this just kind of works on its own, where it's mixing hot and cold water together. One place you can shut water off, like if you need to service the hot water for any reason, like you need maybe a leak or something and you need to shut the water off, you can shut it off right here at the mixing valve, which will kill the hot water that goes to the building. The main cold supply that feeds the entire water heater system is right up above my head. Right here is a ball valve that you can shut the water off that feeds the entire hot water system here. Okay, we are now on the east building, which this is a smaller building, exact same system, but just everything is a little bit shrunk down. There are only 4 heat pumps instead of 6. We have slightly smaller tanks, slightly smaller swing tank. Everything else about it is pretty much identical. The heat pumps for this building are actually located on the 3rd floor, however, where the tanks and everything are on the ground floor. The controller for the heat pumps is here on the wall, and we have the recirculating pump in the back corner. That's the pump that moves water through the whole building. And then right next to it is our mixing valve, which mixes hot and cold water to send the desired temperature out to the building, which is 120 degrees. Everything else is the same. When it comes to shut-off valves, again, on every inlet and outlet for the tank, you have shut-off valve up high, shut-off valve here, and you can isolate the water to this tank for any kind of service and maintenance that you might need to do. If you need to shut water off to the building, the hot water off to the building for any reason, a good and quick place to do it is right here at this mixing valve. It's just it's easily accessible, doesn't require a ladder, and just shutting that off will shut the water off to the hot water supply to the whole building. The main cold water supply coming in, if you need to shut the water off to the entire hot water system, is right there, that cold water coming in. I should add that periodically, I don't expect that it would be full, but this is a Y strainer, which is designed to catch any sediment and debris that comes in from the city water or just whatever. It might be a good idea to once a year shut the water off to this system, pull this cap here off, and inside is just a screen that captures the debris that you can rinse out to make sure that everything flows properly. Again, with this pump is what moves water through the entire building, and if you were to get a phone call that says, hey, like tenants don't have hot water, this would be one of the first places I would check. If you lose power to it for any reason, it doesn't move water through the building. Okay, and lastly, we're here on the east building on the 3rd floor. This is where the 4 heat pumps are that generate the hot water for the tanks that are on the ground floor. There's not much maintenance that's involved in anything up here, but you can come in periodically to check and make sure that pumps are still on, there's no water leaking, anything like that. And then as a final note that applies to kind of everything is that if for any reason that you do have to shut the water down and drain the building, specifically if you're doing anything to drain the building, you have to shut off anything that has a pump in it. So shut the power off to the heat pumps, shut the power off to the recirculating pumps downstairs. If those operate for an extended period of time, usually it's only like 5 minutes without hot water in them, they will actually overheat and burn out. So any time you drain the water for any reason, make sure you shut all your pumps off and your heat pumps. If you do have to, let's say, service this in any way where you're going to do it yourself without a technician and you have to shut the water off to it and then turn it all back on, there are bleeder valves that you should use. One on the bottom right here, and there are two on the hot and cold inlets here. If you just turn these by hand, it lets water and air come out, because you don't want to turn these on when it's full of air. So if you drain it for any reason and have to turn the water back on, just make sure you bleed the air out. That applies to all pumps. And that is all here. You have your individual power supply to each one is located next to every heat pump. Alright, in front of every dwelling unit will be a hot and cold shutoff that you can isolate the water going just to this one unit. What's important to note is that on the third floor, throughout the entire building, each access panel that has the shutoff valves is also going to include something called a circuit solver. It's a balancing valve that regulates the flow of hot water that goes through each unit. So if, for example, you get a phone call where unit 313, 213, and 113 say that they don't have hot water, it's likely that it could have something to do with that valve. One way to easily check that is to just come up here, put your hand on it, see if it's hot to the touch. Or like, it's not hot enough to burn you, it should be hot to the touch. If it's cold, then you know that water is not moving through this unit. It could be that a ball valve has been shut off, or that it's clogged with debris or something like that. But at that point you guys can call. But yes, inside the access panel and occasionally above the T-bar, but in front of every unit, is going to be the hot and cold shutoff valves to isolate the water for that unit. Lastly, on the east side of the project, we got the casitas that are around back, and each unit has its own individual water heater. Now, this is a Rheem, what they call a hybrid heater. It's a heat pump on the top, and the bottom is an electric water heater, and they can work together to get you your hot water in the building. The most economic and energy-friendly way of using this water heater is to utilize the heat pump part of it. However, heat pumps generally take longer to heat the water inside, which is where the hybrid part comes in. The temperature set point on here is just up and down arrows on the left. You always want to leave it at 120 degrees maximum for your units. The mode button on the side can change the function to be vacation mode, which if the unit was to be vacant for an extended period, you might want to put it into vacation mode so that it doesn't use energy. And then there's basically just a series of like high demand, heat pump only, stuff like that, where if you put it into high demand, it will likely use more electricity by using the electric elements in it, where if you put it into just heat pump mode, it will only use the heat pump to heat the water up. For the most part, most of these units have individual heaters, with the exception of a couple of the neighboring ones, like Unit 101, for example. This water heater is actually servicing this unit and the unit next door. So water shutoffs to shut off the water to this unit or to that unit are just up here in the ceiling, and that is it. As far as maintenance goes, it's kind of the same thing. Periodically, you might want to drain the tank for any sediment and buildup that occurs inside, and your electric elements should last several years, but those might need to be checked as well periodically, once every couple years.